We began to understand more and more that we weren't fully thriving in the capacity we could be, and we could be thriving somewhere else, and like it was okay to leave. Does that look like crazy weird, like I'm really wiggly? Because from here in the viewfinder, I don't know why I did that, I just thought of it. I'm pretty sure the last time I did that was here in a video when we were here in Australia last time too. Oh, we're here in Australia.
Another day.
Another vlog.
Yeah, in Australia now.
Cheers to that.
Let's have our little baby. But this is going to be, obviously if you read the title, we're just going to be explaining and like giving you some clarity on the decision as to why we moved, why we left Florida. And it's quite a long story. We have a lot of notes.
So we're gonna be like kind of reading from those and then like recapping.
There was just so much that we wanted to make sure that we didn't like miss anything out. So you might want to go like make yourself a tea or a coffee, because it's probably just gonna be a nice, good long sit down.
We're basically just gonna go chronological order, starting all the way back in 2020, and to explain what was happening in our lives and the progression of how we went essentially from LA to Nashville.
At the beginning of 2020, right before lockdown started, we flew out to Nashville to go to a concert. It was so much fun. And that trip, I fell in love with Nashville.
Yeah.
The music, the people, the culture. So much of it reminded me of Australia. Maybe it was like being in the South, I don't know. It just like was really laid back. Everyone was very hospitable and friendly, and I loved it. Back
in 2019, a year before, was when we had already decided to move to Florida. We had already started building the house. We weren't even considering Nashville at that point. We knew we wanted to leave LA. Jess was kind of like thinking of other places that might
I really like
be good.
was entertaining a lot of other options, but at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that like Florida did make the most sense.
Yeah, I was like, we have family there.
I think for Gabe especially, he didn't want to like go somewhere where we knew nobody and like started completely fresh.
Then we moved to Florida. That was July of 2020. We hadn't moved into our house yet because I was still finishing construction. It was towards the end of it. And essentially, over those like, I would say that the like rest of that year, those 6 months, we were kind of dealing with the expectation that we had of Florida was a lot different than the reality that we were living in.
And it was something that we like realized pretty soon. We did love Florida, and there's so many people there that we love. We have great memories there. Like, I don't want it to seem like we're just like, oh, we hate Florida.
Yeah. There's so much that we learned, so much growth that happened.
There was a lot of good.
And
I don't want it to seem like it's just all bad.
Two of the main things that we were noticing while we were in Florida was like this feeling of isolation, though we were around family and like a community that we had. When we were in LA, we were around a lot of people who kind of did similar stuff to us. And even if they didn't, they like understood it as far as like our work was concerned. And when we were in Florida, we were like, oh, we can do our work from anywhere. So let's just go where family is. But we didn't realize or anticipate even that being away from people who also did the same thing as us or understood what we did, how isolating that would feel.
Or even like people that like do creative stuff every day. It's not just like YouTubers.
It's tough to talk to people about it. If we were to go to someone for like advice or a problem or something like that, there really was no one there who we could go to who could like properly advise on the issue or properly sympathize.
That's what we thought we wanted initially, was like normalcy
and separation from it. And then the second point is specifically for me. I had lived my entire adult life away from home. I left for school at 19, and then after a year I dropped out, moved to LA at 20, and I didn't move back until I was almost 26. I just didn't anticipate that so much would have changed coming back, if that makes sense. And if you have left for like a period of time and gone back to your hometown, you'll probably understand what I'm saying, that so much change kind of happens and people are in different stages of life that you come back and oftentimes you probably don't necessarily fit into that puzzle, if that makes sense. So now, fast forward, finish that year, we're in 2021, and I didn't start to notice this at this point, but it was happening. I kind of noticed this a little later. I started feeling like stagnant in a way, and I didn't know what was happening, but I just realized that like my growth as a human being was far greater when I lived away from my home environment that I grew up in. And at this point, I didn't necessarily realize it yet, but the foundation was being set for these like realizations that I started having.
Something that we realized, and something that we have chatted with some other people about is that often when you live away from your hometown and then come back to your hometown, you can easily be slot into that same
role or position within your like family or within your environment
of like when you left. So say for Gabe, he left 6 years ago. It can be easy to like slot back into maybe who you were.
And like coming back can make you emotionally feel like, or at least like I was 6 years prior to where I really was at. I also like wasn't recognizing that was happening because I didn't know this yet. But that was kind of a tough thing to figure out because I would always like try and be like, do I feel so weird? Why am I feeling like I'm not meshing like I'm supposed to? I feel like I'm taking steps backwards. Like a lot of things were happening with me internally that I was trying to work out. So now we're gonna kind of like fast forward through 2021. I started like dealing with family stuff, things and wounds that I was trying to heal, and you know, stuff that happens when you are an adult. I think it tends to happen like after the age of 24. You kind of start reflecting on your past and start trying to like figure things out. I never had to deal with those things when I lived away from home because I wasn't in like my family environment, and then like kind of putting myself back into my hometown where I grew up. All of a sudden I was like dealing with all this stuff and I'm like, why is this like all of a sudden happening? And I guess it was just because I never had to really face it, and now I was facing it and just trying to figure it out. And then that kind of subsided. I was working through stuff. I then started feeling burnout again, and I could sense that it was coming towards the end of last year. I think it was like September or October. I just had a lot on my plate and I was trying to figure out what I should do with them. And from like a work perspective, I knew that I had to focus on something because I was spread too thin. Like if I'm at this center point and I'm trying to make progress in some direction, I felt like I'd take a few steps in one direction, but then I'd have to shift focus on another project or another lane of my work and take a few steps in another direction and then a few steps in another direction. And I was just kind of bouncing all over the place, not really making any progress anywhere. So once I kind of had that realization, I did an exercise, which you guys probably remember. I posted it on my Instagram story that I was doing it. I had all my different buckets lined up with like what I do. It was like podcasting or social media stuff, acting / film and TV stuff, music, real estate that we're doing, like all the things that we're working on. I was trying to figure out where most of my skills and abilities lined up with what things I was working on. And that kind of was a bust. But what I realized when I was looking at all of these different things that I had on my plate, most of my contribution to our household income came through the social media stuff. So that was kind of like a clear indicator of I can scrap most of these like other projects that I'm trying to do and still contribute to our household income very well and not be spread so thin. So that's like the financial perspective. And then the more like passion, calling perspective was when I looked at all of those things, and if I was wildly successful at all of those things besides film and TV and the acting stuff, but I didn't give that like a proper solid try of like, I'm going to do this with my career, I knew that I would feel like I wasted what I was supposed to be doing. I started freaking out at that point in time because I was like, I can't just like stop doing all of these other things. Like I'm gonna let so many people down. There's projects that I've already started. I can't just stop doing all of these things. It's actually a week later was when we found out that we were pregnant. And that was kind of a huge eye-opening moment for me that it was, I took it as like God's permission saying like, yeah, you're on the right track. You need to cut stuff out. Because then now it's like, okay, now I need to free up more time to be a dad and be present as a father. So that burnout, trying to figure out what to cut out, you know, dealing with all of that in my head, along with now this like pressure of, oh, I'm gonna be a dad. This kind of led to me going to another season of depression at the end of 2021 and into the beginning of 2022, basically.
Also in 2021, we took a couple trips to Nashville to do some music stuff, and I, again, being there, just like loved being there. While at the same time, we were both kind of, throughout the whole time of living in Florida, we were always on the same page. It wasn't like I wasn't enjoying it or you weren't enjoying it. It was like we were both feeling the exact same.
Yeah, it was kind of like this weird feeling that continued to grow of like, we might not stay here. What's up, dog? We had a friend tell us one time, they were just over for dinner, and she was basically like, yeah, I could see you guys not staying here, moving somewhere else. That was like the first, I think, permission in my mind that like, oh, it's okay
leave.
To think about it, it's okay to move somewhere else.
So I was already entertaining the idea of like maybe living somewhere else. So Nashville was in my mind, but at that point in time, it wasn't really in Gabe's mind. The idea of moving, like Gabe just said, like the permission to leave, I think was like pretty heavy for you and like took you some time to come to.
Like the permission for myself, like me giving myself the permission, like it's okay to leave.
Okay, so we're going to just include this really quick little story. We have a couple like God moments throughout this that we wanted to include. So this is one. This is Thanksgiving last year. I'm pregnant and I'm sick. We're in Los Angeles and we end up being invited to go to Thanksgiving at this family's house that we had never met before, but our friend was going and they invited us, which was really sweet. They are also like in the entertainment industry, lovely Christian family. It was just really cool meeting them. The mom is an acting coach, and it was kind of all at the same time that Gabe had decided that he wanted to restart acting and auditioning.
This
again.
would have been a few weeks after that realization I had.
So long story short with that, the acting coach then becomes Gabe's acting coach.
Yes. Fast forward, we find out they're also moving to Nashville. When we left that Thanksgiving dinner, we were like, why didn't we meet them during all the years that we lived here? Like, they were so great. We weren't sure on like timing or whatever, but they moved the exact like same time that we moved to Nashville. Had Thanksgiving in LA, shot over to Australia for Christmas and New Year's.
Gabe is going through a little season of depression at this point. We came more to terms with the fact that, or probably more you, Florida probably wasn't the place that we wanted to stay in. Then Nashville came up in conversation of like, hey, let's think about Nashville.
Jess was never pushing it.
I didn't want to, no.
I feel like it was God really just kind of like pushing it on my heart, or like just placing it on my heart, or maybe like softening my heart to the idea. So something we have written down, which is a pretty cool note. Again, it's like more permission, you know, especially one of the big guilts of leaving Florida was leaving my family. We realized that we didn't have to stay in a place we didn't feel like we were thriving in just because our family was there. We began to understand more and more that we weren't fully thriving in the capacity we could be, and we could be thriving somewhere else, and like it was okay to leave.
I suggested, hey, why don't we separately write a pros and cons list about the cons of leaving Florida and then the pros of moving to Nashville. So we did that separately and came together. I really enjoyed that exercise. We had like a bunch of similar pros and cons. We then saw that there was actually a lot of pros, more pros than cons. So we then decided, let's take an intentional trip to Nashville, because before that we had gone for the concert, we had gone for music, like to record stuff, but we really wanted to take a trip intentionally, go there for a couple weeks and see what living there would be like.
So we come back from Australia, and then I think it was February was when I'm part of this men's group that it's like guys from all around the country, solid Christian, creative, entrepreneurial men who are also like fathers and dads, and yeah, it's just a really, really awesome group. At this point, I kind of felt like a crazy person because I didn't feel like I was being understood, or anyone I talked to in Florida. I don't know why, but like no one could like understand what I was trying to like work through and deal with. I was like, my brain is broken and I'm actually a crazy person. Anyway, go on this men's group, and there was one specific guy that I wanted to talk to. He's like a world-class counselor. He goes through this whole talk about like basically just all on emotions and connection with like family, connection with your spouse and with your kids, and just like emotional intelligence as a whole. Just that talk was so validating, and I already had it in my mind that I wanted to talk to this guy. We go and grab lunch, and I just kind of like unload everything that I'm going through, everything I'm working through. He was so just like understanding and validating. It was like the first time in a while I didn't feel like I was going insane. He's like, oh, if you were to leave Florida, where would you move to? And I was like, oh, we're thinking about Nashville. He was like, dude, we live in Nashville. And so this was like one of the first few God moments for me that was like, could be like coincidence, or maybe, you know, something cool is happening here. In that conversation, he was like, dude, if you do decide to move to Nashville, like you already have us, and like we have an amazing community there that we can get you plugged in with people who work in the industry, are creative people, musicians, like a whole bunch. Like he's just very well connected. He was basically like assuring, like you already have a community there if you decide to make the move. On the last day, I was having a conversation with a guy who had just moved his whole family from the East Coast all the way to Hawaii. And I was kind of just explaining to him how it was just such a big deal in my head. Like, we're gonna move. This is like this big thing that feels so permanent and so big, you know?
It was like very heavy in your mind.
Yeah, he was basically assuring me like, dude, it doesn't need to be so heavy. Him and his wife were both, you know, praying about it. They separately came to the conclusion that they would want to move to Hawaii. And they were like, let's just move to Hawaii, we're in a place there, and if it doesn't work out, then we can move back.
Obviously, if you're in the position to do that.
Yeah.
Work, kids, school, all of that.
Like if you can afford to move or whatever. But he was like, dude, then just do it. It doesn't need to be permanent. It can be, you know, if it really feels like that's a place where you need to be. But that kind of took off that weight that I was carrying.
It was like another level of permission for yourself.
Yeah, of like, it's okay to leave. They were leaving family as well. So it was like exact same boat, and he was like, we are loving our life so much better that we kind of like followed that instinct or intuition. It was like the turning point. The flip had been switched to kind of like my internal healing. I come home and kind of unload all of this to Jess while we were already planning to take a trip at some point in the next few weeks to Nashville.
This trip was very prayed over the whole time, and we were just like really seeking guidance and like signs if it was like the right thing to do. Okay, so our day one, we're like, let's just go explore the area a little bit. So we decided to go see a movie. Gabe knew people from like the social media world that he knew lived in Nashville. He wasn't sure like where, but he knew that he wanted to reach out to them to let them know that we were going to be here for a couple weeks. So he wanted to reach out to both of the guys to be like, hey.
I meant to text him that day.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he forgot. So we're in the movie theater, the movie's about to start, the ads are playing, whatever, and in come one of the guys and his wife, and we were like, is that them? It was so crazy. It was like a very cute, like small town feel.
The movie theater we chose, the movie we chose, the time, yeah, it was just so bizarre. So I texted him and he turns around and I was just like, ugh.
We then ended up hanging with them, I think like two times.
Or...
Seemed like we were already getting such nice community like straight from day one. One of the times we hung out, we went to the movies. While we were there at the movies at the exact same time, I see someone that I know from Brisbane, Australia, and Gabe met someone that was like from his church back in Florida.
Not that that like really means anything, but it was just like weird moments like that. That's
what
like,
is
why?
Nashville?
What is happening right now, you know? There's like another set of people, actually part of the mastermind group that I'm a part of. I learned him and his wife are thinking about moving to Nashville. When we take the trip, I text him and they were taking the same type of trip at the exact same time that we were there, which was so weird. And he's an actor and his wife is pregnant at the same time as Jess, like almost like a month or two apart or something. Mm-hmm. So we got to spend time with them, got to meet another couple who are both actors as well. That was a really cool thing too, just kind of more little confirmations of like, you know, your community's being built here. And we also got to hang out with my friend from the mastermind group who I got to talk to over lunch. We spent time with him and his wife, which was really cool. And it was just like really validating being able to talk with them, because we were kind of just like catching up about what's going on in life and their life and our life. But then they're both like world-class counselors.
They are also in such a similar position to us. She is from a different country, and they both live away from both families. So it was just really nice to like talk with them and see how much they are thriving in their little community in Nashville. During this trip as well, I did record some music, which was just so much fun. Our producer, who used to live in Los Angeles, who we have worked with on music, like all of our covers and stuff for years. Love him and his family.
Yeah,
they
awesome.
Moved to Nashville in 2019. So whenever we have gone to Nashville, it was to work with him. So another reason why we both fell in love with it was there is such an awesome mix of wholesome family life and entertainment and work, which is what we felt like we were lacking in Florida.
So one of the days that she went to go record, on the drive there, I'm texting with my buddy Zach, who's here in Australia. And he was just texting me, asking me, he's like, yo, how's Nashville? How you feeling about it? What's going on? Any updates? I just kind of gave him a Cliff Notes lowdown on a voice text. So I sent him a voice text. I send it off. It ends up being 2 minutes and 21 seconds. I start sending another one. And when I send that off, that one ended up being 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So then I record a third one and I'm like, yo, bro, that's so crazy. Both of those ended up being 2 minutes and 21 seconds. That's gotta mean something, you know? It's gotta be a sign. Just like totally joking around. So then Jess goes, oh, what if it's a Bible verse? Like, you should look up Matthew 2:21. But at this point, we were pulling up to our buddy's house to record. So we didn't end up looking it up. We go inside, record. I kind of forget about it. This was in like towards the end of the second week. So it's one of our last few days in Nashville during this trip. We go to dinner. At dinner, we're just having a really kind of like big conversation about our feelings in Nashville and what's going on. And during this whole time, I was really feeling, you need to do this. This is the right thing. You need to do this. This is the right thing. A lot of what was happening there was just all pointing towards us thriving there if we were to make the move. At that dinner, Jess and I make the decision together. Actually, over the table, we shook hands on it. We were like, we're making the move to Nashville. So then that night, we're sitting on the couch on Airbnb. We remember like, oh, we should look up the 2:21 thing. We should look up the Bible verse. And then I just pulled out my phone and went on the Bible. I looked up Matthew 2:21, and it says, so he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. We had already decided, so this wasn't like a deciding factor. For us, it was just kind of cool. It was like, whoa, crazy Bible verse that was it. That it's like Jesus and both of his parents going, and like Jess is pregnant at the time, and we're trying to figure out what to do and where we want to take our family. And I started looking up other translations of the Bible because I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if it said like promised land instead of Israel. So it was like less specific, and was like, oh yeah, we're gonna, we go to the promised land or whatever. Fast forward, my friend who's in Nashville, he connects me with a realtor, another awesome Christian guy, and he's just telling me about their business and what they do and stuff like that. He goes, yeah, our slogan is bringing you to your promised land. And I was like, whoa. Then fast forward another few more weeks, maybe another week or two, we're having lunch with my mom, basically like explaining all of this sort of stuff to her, the friends we were meeting, the people we were meeting. We get to this point where we're talking about this Bible verse, and I'm explaining the story to her when I say the part where Jess goes, oh, it could be a Bible verse. Before I'm able to say what Jess said, my mom goes, what, like Matthew 2:21? They already said the exact same Bible verse. And I was like, yes, Mom, that exact Bible verse.
Another thing is that we really loved the sense of seasons during that trip. It actually snowed our first morning there, and it was cold, and we really love seasons and like the idea of being able to experience seasons. Obviously in Florida, it's basically summer all year round. Queensland, it's like, you know, you get a little cold in winter, but it's not like seasons like
cold enough to wear a hoodie.
Yeah. Anyway.
So many good things happen in Nashville, in this like community that was kind of like given to us in a way. And just during our time there, we were like, man, so many of these people here are people that we would love for our daughter to be raised around.
And that was really one of the biggest things. And a lot of the people that we know or that we're meeting, like they have babies or they're pregnant at the same time. And so it just seemed like such a cool community to be a part of.
And I actually have family pretty close.
Yes, I know there's a lot of people like, you're leaving family, which we are, but we do have family who we love a lot.
Yeah.
Who are also pregnant at the same time as us. Like pretty close.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. We're excited to like raise our daughter with them as well.
Twin girls.
I know.
So there's gonna be 3 little girls.
3 little besties.
Yeah.
Me especially, but I think we both like really love the idea of a slower paced lifestyle, especially with raising a daughter. We would love some land, and like the idea of chickens and veggie patches, all of that like is so appealing to me, and like a slower paced lifestyle.
But it's not just in the middle of nowhere, it's also like a city that's like thriving with creative energy, I guess.
I also have a really close girlfriend. The husband is also a friend of Gabe's. They live in Tennessee. We love them so much, and we just loved like the idea of like being closer to them as well.
Yeah. During our 2 weeks there, that feeling that I mentioned at the beginning of the video of like, there was so much growth that happened when I was living away from home. And then when I came home, I just feel like that was stunted a bit. And then all of a sudden during these 2 weeks here, I was able to recognize it. It was that feeling of like, I feel like I'm growing again. I really don't know like what that is, but it was there, and it was very much a thing, and I finally felt that again, which is really cool.
The last thing that we'll say about the trip in general is that after talking to a lot of our friends, it seems like a lot of them are in the same position. There just seems to be a lot of people that are considering Nashville or feeling led to Nashville, moving to Nashville. We love that. A huge blessing for us. Okay, so now we have landed back in Florida after our amazing 2 weeks. Our assistant, Victoria, who we love so much, was picking us up from the airport. She knew that we were taking the trip. She knew that it was intentional, so we knew that we had to tell her. We again have loved working with her. We love her so much, and so she was actually one of the main cons of leaving Florida. Was like, we don't want to leave Victoria, and we don't want to stop working with her. She's like asking us about the trip, and she's like, so are you moving?
Yeah.
We end up telling her yes, blah 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 blah, and then
she ends up telling us, I was really nervous for you guys to say no, which I'm glad you didn't, because her husband had accepted a job in Colorado. The timing of it was all like, couldn't have happened better.
It was really an answered prayer because of how much we like didn't want to leave her. And it just seemed so incredible that we were both kind of like starting new seasons and new paths.
Another thing was, as we were like figuring out what to do, one of the cars, we were like, okay, we're gonna sell this car before we go up there, and then we'll just like use one car for a while. And all of a sudden, one of our friends in Florida reaches out and goes, hey, by the way, if you ever decide to sell your car,
I'd love it.
I'd love it. It's like one of my favorite cars, so I would love to buy it from you. What are the chances?
Just another answered prayer. Maybe it seems like we're just like listing a bunch of little things, but for us it just gave us so much confidence and peace that like it was the right decision.
It was a lot of things like that that could have just added another layer of stress, was kind of just like completely wiped away. And we actually have one more of those things. We're trying to figure out what to do with Milo because we were going to be here for so long in Australia, because we needed to get here like a period of time before having the baby so we could, you know, fly in a safe window for Jess and have the baby, and then we're not going to fly back right away with a newborn, so it's going to be some time after. And we're now in this new city. I can't just like rely on family to take care of our dog.
We end up talking to some friends of ours in Nashville and kind of explaining our situation, seeing if maybe...
The friends from the movies.
We were just seeing if maybe they were willing to watch Milo for us. Anyway, they come back to us and they're like, hey, this is kind of funny, but our lease ends at the end of May, which by the way is when we left. We don't have another place to move into yet. If you need someone to house sit and dog sit, we would be totally willing to do that. And so we sorted all of that out with them. They are the ones looking after Milo right now.
And after the house.
So it was
like,
just
perfect.
Another answered prayer, even I guess from their side as well. So that was just kind of like the final piece of the puzzle for us. There's so much involved in it, and I hope that gives you guys some clarity. I hope this also kind of explains to you why we couldn't just like answer it really quick in a Q&A or like reply to a comment. So that's our story.
So we'll leave it there.
Y'all, that's why we are Southerners.
Y'all.
I hope you enjoyed this little sit down, catch up chat. I know, sorry it was so long. We love you guys and appreciate like all of the support. So many people are like so happy for us with the move and stuff, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we will see you in our next video.
Peace out.
From Jess
and Gabriel Conti. You!